Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow. I haven't been feeling myself of late, so yeah, I'm sorry over there. I haven't put any makeup on or anything. I normally come to you and then I normally make an effort, but I just thought today I would just sort of rock up and sit here and talk to you as without any accompaniment at all. Actually, the reason we're doing this is I've been told that if we do this via puppet, we might be eligible for a government grant from the Australian Children Television Workshop. So we're going to try that anyway.
You're looking very full-bodied there.
I'm looking very full-bodied. I'm feeling a little bit disconnected from everything right at the moment. But welcome to Full Course Yellow, as we say always. If you're coming here straight from Channel 31, then a big welcome to you. If you're coming here just out of the blue, if you find us on YouTube, this is just to get together sort of every Thursday night after In Pit Lane finishes on Channel 31, where we get together and we talk all things motorsport, amongst other things. So good to catch up with everybody once again. And joining us once again is a cast of several, and we're joining. There they are. Oh, there I am as well too. Hello, everybody. How are you? So there you go. So that was a little bit of unplanned comedy, courtesy of Dave Stillwell and Stuart Fairweather.
The Puppet Master.
The Puppet Master, yes.
Pulling the strings. Pulling the strings.
Yeah, pulling the strings. Yes. So hello everybody. Welcome. Now that I can see you all. There we go. So anyway, that was
concrete.
a big one. Yeah, thank you.
We need sandblasting before we need the concrete. Trust us.
Yeah, that's it. So anyway, good to catch up with everybody. A big week at Le Mans, of course. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And Formula One's back this week. We've got Formula One to talk about this week as well. So
you mean the merry-go-round?
It has been interesting. There hasn't been.
Do you have the Nick Damon sound effect queued up for our Formula One news?
Yay!
I think we've alluded to the Benny Hill one as well too sometimes.
Yeah, so it's good.
We'll just apologise to anyone who's on headphones. Dave, you're just a touch loud.
Oh, be nice.
Yeah, we don't have
When
any.
did that happen?
Hey, he's usually fading out, so I reckon that's a good thing. We'll take it while we can. Sometimes he's usually glitching or fading out, so it's still not that way. usually on the Disney set of Frozen.
But then we see one of the first things coming up in Formula One. Yeah, Formula One been on the break, of course, and now that everybody's back, there is a bit of Formula One news happening. First news, I mean, no surprise at all. Fernando Alonso has re-signed with to spend another year at least with Alpine, and I would imagine. Pete, do you think that that will see him out, or do you think he's because Alpine's the management of Alpine said today that as far as they're concerned, he can pretty much stay as long as he wants. They're delighted with him. They think he's still a great driver. Obviously, they reckon he's done a really good job for the team. Very very impressed with what he's bringing to the team, and they said if he can stay as long as he wants. So, but do you think that he might do another year and then perhaps look at that long-term plan, which was like at some stage he said he would like to go back to Indy, and also he's got the possibility of some sports car racing as well if Alpine sort of pull their finger out and make an announcement about what they're going to do at Le Mans.
Yeah, I think this will be his last contract in Formula One. I think this will see him out because he's 40, I think, this year. So I think this will be his last contract, and and he's been a good number two to Esteban. And
yes, that's it. Yeah, g'day, Jason. Yes, it is clobbering. We should have Cult of Personality playing in the background. Jason and I know exactly what that. What that's on about. So there we go.
Question:
yes.
Why isn't Jason in this panel?
Well,
his
Jason
choice.
Jason is welcome to join at any time, as indeed is anybody. I mean, just let us know and you can jump on board. But anyway, good to catch up with you, Jace. I think Alonso, from the point of view, he has brought a lot to the team, and as I said, he brought a lot to Toyota as well. They were very very pleased with him when he was racing there. The other bit of news that's coming out is what is happening with the future of Kimi Raikkonen. The rumours are that Kimi Raikkonen is under quite a bit of pressure now to step aside and make some room at Alfa Romeo so that Mick Schumacher can jump across, because Ferrari are saying they would really like to bring some of their talent from their driver academy, either somebody like Robert Schwartzman or Callum Ilott through into Haas. And for Mick to possibly move up the next step on the ladder into Alfa Romeo, but in order to get him there, they've got to have a seat for him, and they're not going to push out Mr. Mazepin and all of his money. So I think the pressure has got to be on Kimi. And the thing is, I mean, the thing is with Kimi Raikkonen. He's still a very good driver, but you wonder what else he actually does bring to the team, because you never hear any stories about he's very inspirational, he's very he helps out he helps out the young drivers, he contributes a lot, because he basically just turns up and drives. He doesn't seem particularly interested in anything else. I mean, he's barely interested in breathing sometimes.
What about the stories of him having a mad pub crawl or something like? Never ever.
Oh, rumours.
Once, I think.
Yeah. So there is, you're true there. So there is one more driver change that's been speculated all year, even late last year, that's come up in the media as well in the last couple of days. And this is coming straight from the horse's mouth, and I have to whisper it because it's a secret. And I shall say this only once. Valtteri Bottas has said Lewis has told him who he wants to be his sidekick next year. Did you hear that one?
Yes. Well, I mean, we've discussed that in the past. I mean, it's no surprise, is it?
Yeah. Hey, I want it. It's you, Valtteri. I want you.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that Valtteri, Lewis would be very happy with Valtteri, because Valtteri's not putting the sort of pressure on him that George Russell might put on him.
Well, that's what Valtteri said. He said, Lewis has told me directly, face-to-face, eye-to-eye, that he wants me.
Yes, well, there you go. And I'm sure Max Verstappen is quite happy to keep Sergio around at the moment as well. I mean, until Sergio finds his feet and suddenly starts beating Max. I mean, as long as if you're going to be number one, if you think you're number one and you want to be number one, you don't want sort of a number two who's going to challenge you.
Yep, exactly.
Speaking of number twos, we'll just put up this graphic because the number two drivers have been getting up to a little bit of that, haven't they? And I will put my bet down as Max crash happen.
Yeah,
this could be a mixed grill on the top 10 starting grid for qualifying, because has anyone seen all the different facets, all the different positions that all the teams are in with their power plants going to this weekend and taking grid penalties and the upgrades and stuff? So if you take into consideration Ferrari, they're going to roll out a whole host of changes to their power plant and upgrades. So they've had them all in the on the cards all year, and this was going to be the rollout, the Belgian GP anyway. It's far, so they're going to be bringing out. I think Banatini. I think the CEO said that's going to happen this weekend. But Leclerc has had his damage, and he might take a power five grid penalty because of that. Lewis is in the box seat if he doesn't change anything, because Verstappen and Perez have got power plant damage, and they might take a double whammy on both cars and roll out with two new engines. And there's Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, and that's right, McLaren's in another predicament as well too with theirs. Do they upgrade or do they don't? And with Daniel, etc. So everyone's going to be playing ducks and drakes or crazy stuff, and probably trying to peek in each other's garages on who's going to be officially taking upgrades into it, and where they end up in qualifying, etc. So it could be a cakewalk, they said, for Lewis if all the cards fall into his hands.
The other thing is, of course, it's, the races at Spa, and we never know what the weather's going to do at Spa.
Rain.
For overtaking too.
What was that, Pete?
It could rain at the top of the mountain and be sunny at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, it's done that so many times. We know that they've had so many big accidents there over the recent years. Not so much in Formula One, but certainly we saw one in the Spa 24 Hours. We saw, of course, that tragic Formula 2 crash there as well. So it'll be interesting.
I think we see a fairly major accident there I think we see a fairly major accident there in the Total 24 Hours of Spa every year.
Yeah. Well, that's when you got that many sort of almost identically
tradition
performing cars, and those a mixture of drivers and a mixture of capabilities. I mean, it's a hell of a challenge there. And I mean, the problem with that particular set of corners from Eau Rouge through to Radillon is apparently it's totally blind. Apparently, you just go over and you have no idea what's there until you're there. So it'll be interesting. So
I had the chance to visit that circuit 2 years ago. I can guarantee you, it's A, very steep, and B, very blind.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, it's like Bathurst and it's like Macau. I mean, you don't realise how, until you go there. Same with Bathurst. You don't realise, that it's uphill, but you don't realise how steep it is and how narrow it is until you get there. And that's obviously the case at Spa as well. Haven't been there, but as you say, like once you get there and you see those elevation changes, I imagine it's a lot more. It's like Bathurst being a lot more impressive in real life than it is on the television.
Stuart's usually all over the graphics. Have you got a graphic ready for the difference to the top of Panorama to the bottom, and same with Spa, Stuart? You're usually all over that.
No, I don't, because I was actually taking a look at some of the comments, and I'm just going to play a prank here because I can. And here comes the graphic.
Oh, that's mean.
He's still not talking. He's still reading.
Brad, when he speaks, it'll be like an earthquake has happened around you and swallowed you up with the revelation. So just when it happens. So that's about as close as I've got to a graphic for anything.
That was you, Chris.
Although I was looking at
the floor was yours, Richie. The whole floor was yours.
He doesn't say much, but when he does, it has meaning. It has, he's very. So
we don't get to use this word very much. He has gravitas.
Gravitas, yes. That's the word I was looking for. Yes, gravitas. Yeah, incidentally, Michael, the answer to that any motorsport in Vic or New South Wales, the answer is no.
No.
It's so frustrating. I mean, I saw that. I don't know if you saw
Well, that's not entirely true, but it happens at about 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's the local lads doing burnouts and whatever. So that curfew thing, clearly. It's not covered under the Hoon laws.
Oh, on the plus side, it does make the news too at 6 o'clock on the following night, which as well. It still makes.
Round 3, Winton, it isn't being rescheduled. It's been cancelled as of about 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Well, without further ado, they're talking without going into too much of supercars. They're talking about pushing that into December now.
Yes.
Well, they'd have to. I mean, I think
we could always do a summer series. I believe there is historic comments about why do people race in the winter in Australia. The sprint cars have got it under control. They race across summer. Why? Because it's warm at night. It's fun.
They race at night. We race in the daytime usually.
They're going to be competing with other sports. They're going to be
supercars. Yeah, but imagine supercars under lights.
Oh, it'd be fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It's just that sports have had their general concept of the different parts of the calendar for many, many, many moons, and of course they're all satisfied with their things. So yes, if they do want to run a sport, they've got to actually adapt to the calendar and it's obviously the situation in the world. Therefore, they're going to be in competition with other sports that there might be football or cricket or soccer or like that. So it's up to them. If they want to try and have a sport and have a public recognition and attendance, then they need to adapt.
Well, the
And if they
original
ran in
plan
summer,
for
all the European drivers would come to Australia and we would have really good racing.
well, that's the plan for S5000. I mean, with the idea for the Tasman series, it's obviously not this year. It's not happening this year. Although it was announced today that we've got another team coming in, Josh Hunt, who has raced extensively in America and is currently racing in the Carrera Cup. Josh is joining S5000, and the plan is that the S5000s would run a Tasman series over the summer period, with races in Australia in probably December. And
check it out, Discord. I put a little brief in it before the show tonight too, which I didn't know we were going to be talking about. So I quickly put a bit on Discord for that too.
Yeah, so that's obviously this year, I mean, everything's up in the air. I mean, because of the current situation, and the problem is, I mean, everybody's it's wishful thinking now. I mean, they're still saying Sandown Historic is probably going, because they're just saying, well, that's November, and November everything will be okay. But I mean, we thought that September would be okay. We thought lots of things would be okay, but yeah. So that was that's a bit of a
nice rundown there,
Josh Hunt's website.
Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Josh, and we'll try and get him on the show in the next few.
It's
few
lovely
weeks.
and colourful.
So.
And what is Mr. Van der Acker sharing with us?
That's okay. So the AMRS round being penciled into the form of festival. Yeah, the Festival of Speed weekend, another round in November, which includes the rescheduled XL Enduro meeting.
There you go, Richard. It says there's an XL in that note. Take note.
Yeah, I saw it. Yes, we'll see how that goes. It kept on getting rescheduled and then pulled So yeah, watch this space.
Well, the problem is, I mean, every time because they cancel, it's not so much the race meeting; it's the things like this, the accommodation or taking time off work or all those sorts of things. You plan for something and say, oh yes, okay, I'm going to book some accommodation, and then you've got to cancel the accommodation, then you've got to rebook the accommodation, and you might not get the accommodation, if you don't get in quick enough, and then can you still go if you've got nowhere to stay? And it's really hard to plan anything at the moment. I mean, it's making life really difficult for us. And I mean, I think we saw today how difficult it is for the local motorsport media with the front page of Australian Auto Action, which was Jaguar to join Supercars, and then you read the story and it was well, no, they're not. I mean, Walkinshaw sort of reached out to them and said, would you like to join Supercars? And they said no. And that was pretty much the end of the story.
Were you reading the front cover of Women's Day? Were you like Megan and Harry have split up again? Oh,
it was a bit like that. It was like another Nicole and Keith. It's over. I mean, how many times has that been out?
That's over every month, and they're back on again and off again. Oh, it's up and down days.
Yeah, so I think that the problem is that we've got nothing really nothing local to talk about. I mean, it's all international stuff.
Which is very exciting anyway, but
it's exciting, but I mean,
maybe we're deprived.
We are. I mean, I'm feeling deprived. I mean, sort of the last thing that we, when was the last thing that we had that we covered in Melbourne? It was, back in March or
Sandown State Round in February?
You had the opportunity to go to Sandown and Phillip Island, and you've made some of it, I think.
Sandown Supercars in March.
Yeah, well, we don't cover this. We can't cover the Supercars. We don't cover the state series anymore. So so I think it would have been Phillip Island. Yeah, it was one of the Phillip Island Super Sprints. And
by the way, just because we cover it doesn't mean the public can either. Because there are a couple of events that have been entertained and still put on, there's still been no spectators as well. So it's a case of it's not free for all.
Yeah, I think that's the next problem. Is I think that's one of the reasons for the delay at Bathurst is that they're saying, well, we really don't want to we really don't want to come back, and we can't come back unless we can have spectators there. The interesting thing is that whole impasse between the Bathurst 1000, between Supercars and the Bathurst Challenge, is now over, and I believe it's over to the tune of about of at least six figures. The Bathurst Challenge has essentially, I believe, been underwritten by the Bathurst City Council and others, and that's the deal that's been done so that they're not going to be out of pocket as a result of Supercars moving to the week before their event. So,
Speaking of what we're talking about,
Were they actually out of pocket? I mean, really? I mean, they couldn't have been much out of pocket. There was still a gap between both events of a week, basically.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think the point is that they had, the Bathurst Challenge were of the opinion that they had an exclusion zone around their event, and as far as they were concerned, they're quite right. They had a valid contract, and they said, well, we're not giving it up. Well, as everybody's got the price for the $1 Million Man, they just decided that, okay, this is the price, and they've come to the agreement, and whatever the agreement is. But, as I said, the rumour going around is that it's a substantial amount of money. So, good luck to them.
Speaking of that,
just moved to late in November, maybe early December. So that went out the window, didn't it?
You were going to say something silly?
Was I reading correctly on that? My understanding was that Challenge Bathurst was formerly a James O'Brien Yeehaw event.
Yes.
Correct.
But in reading the stuff that's come out about that event, it appears to have possibly transitioned to a new management company.
Yeah, it looks like I'm
Yes.
not sure what the status is of Yeehaw and that whether they've been sort of incorporated into another group, or whether they've sold the rights to Challenge Bathurst. I heard nothing because I started to see the reports come out, and it's like it was. Do you know, Richard? I mean, have you got? Because you're a competitor.
Okay. My check was written to Accelerated Events, and then later, somewhere it's either on the invoice or the receipt or something. Suddenly, Yeehaw has turned up somewhere at the bottom of the paper. So Yeehaw's still in there somewhere, but the bill is. The invoices from Accelerated Events. So
the magic pencil was working.
Yeah, something like that.
We could also talk NRL as well too. Anyone interested in the Brisbane Broncos? I'm going to buy some shares. Anyone want to go there?
Yeah,
because they're buying Supercars.
What sort of engine does a Bronco have?
Yeah,
The answer is a Windsor or a Cleveland and nothing else.
302 V8 in a Bronco, and for some reason wanted to. Paul Adderton's found another angle. Peter Adderton's found another angle. Let's hide behind an NRL team.
Yes, it's interesting. I mean,
hold on 1 second before we get. Did we have a look at what Mr. Van der Acker wrote
about sorry, I just you clicked.
Yeah, I'm getting.
No, we haven't looked at Nacker's graphic yet.
I just love the last part of that, the highlighted part of the sentence. There's going to be a lot of companies like that.
Yes, that's. They'd be getting absolutely sick to death of it, wouldn't they? I mean, because I did the thing. I went to book for the Festival of Speed up at Wangaratta, where I normally stay up it was the same sort of thing. It's like, is it still going ahead? It's like at this stage, and then sort of about 4 days later, it's like I'm gonna have to cancel that. Yeah, we know.
So Brett was going to get his wang out, and he put it back away again. Thank God for that.
But anyway, that's
and moving on.
Yes, just riding straight.
And I'm just going to go write a reply here. Summer sport? No, they're not summer sports due to the type of vehicles used or the traction on.
You're reading these. You're reading
these before
we get to see them. Here we go.
You can run speedways on asphalt. It doesn't need to be run on dirt.
Yeah, but you want it to be dry. I mean, same with drag racing. I mean, drag racing is, you've got to do it in the dry, and it certainly helps to
Look,
have.
if it
You want it to
rains
be
during a
dry
drag
because you
racing
want
event
punters to
or a
turn
super
up
speedway event,
and pay
I've said this
money.
over and over and over and over. If it rains during these events, race hovercraft. It'll be hilarious. Imagine
Yep.
hilarious, like hovercraft on a banked oval. It will be
Just-
fabulous, and the people will get covered in just as much wet clay as they would if it was the sprint car.
Well, that's one way to bring more fans to an event.
Well, this is true. I mean,
And more
well,
rainbows and pots of gold at the end of it too when they hit the fence.
the thing is, I
Well,
mean,
yeah, they will hit the fence because the hovercraft's a fun
as
thing
we've
to
said
try and
before,
control.
motorsport around the world is a summer sport, and it's not in Australia. And the argument in Australia has always been, every time I raise this, it's always like, yes, but it's so hot. It's so hot in Australia. It says, as if it's not hot in the summer in France and Italy and Greece and all
So's
the
the
places
engine.
that race in the. They're all in the 30. I mean,
that?
it was 30 degrees at Le Mans on the weekend, and I've been there when it was 30. I think it was 34 one year that we went along there. That was it was 34
I'm
for a couple
surprised
of days.
no one in Australia has taken a leaf out of what they do in North America. Consider the IMSA series or NASCAR. Like, where do they race in the cold months of February and March? They race in Florida.
Warm states.
They race in California,
No.
and then in the summer months they go to the states that are, I don't know, covered in snow in winter. So it's a nice, balmy, 22, 23 degrees on a good day.
Yep.
And they race at Road America and Watkins Glen.
I'll give you two
and all these
respectable
little
events.
tracks.
I'll give you two respectable events last year, which I was very lucky enough to take time off and get before what we're living with now. Remember, Brett, and I even sent you a picture of my dash, and it was 42 degrees outside when I went up to New South Wales and to the Bend for Asia Le Mans last year at the start of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So we were racing in heat last year for those 2 weekends, which were only 2 weekends apart. It was over at the Bend. It was around 35, 40 degrees. And I remember saying to you, Brett, how hot it was because I was also watching the Australian Open on that weekend at Bathurst 12-hour. And it was 35, 40 degrees and the air conditioning wasn't doing much as well, though, too. And it was a respectable air conditioning. So we were racing in excessive heat last year for 2 really respectable events.
Yeah, I think it's what
I
Paul's
should
saying.
point out.
Bang on.
Oh yeah. Hang on. I'm just going to go. What event has a higher temperature and more wind? Paris-Dakar or the Fink?
Probably it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I would think.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think, as Dave said,
And,
if they planned these things, I mean, there wouldn't be all like crisscrossing that goes on. And if they said, okay,
We
we're
already
going to
go
start
racing in the
They've gotta
north part of
talk to each
Australia
other.
during winter.
Yeah, I mean that's let's let's run the Tasmanian round, the Victorian rounds. Perhaps not South, but even South Australia. But run all the southern rounds in sort of January, February, March, and then slowly but surely move around Australia. So once we get to the middle of winter and all that, we're already up at Darwin at that time. We know the weather up there is fabulous at that time. Townsville's going to be fine. Pretty much any time during the winter. Brisbane's going to be pretty good, and slowly work your way down and finish in Sydney. Have rather than sort of crisscrossing one way to the other, have some sort of structure so that they go around, and as you say, they follow the weather. It's like the cricket as well. I mean, they don't play cricket in the summer in the Northern Territory. Right now it's cricket season in Alice Springs and Darwin. If you go up there, that's what they're playing now. They're not playing footy, they're playing cricket. Their footy season is basically starting now. Because they get the wet weather in, they get the monsoonals in the monsoons in the summer, so they play the footy at night in the summer, and they play cricket during our winter. So you can actually move around if you're a professional cricketer of any.
So speaking of
any sort of
speaking
talent.
of sport and weather, Brett, that's a really good segue to the kickoff for the 2021 edition of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which the whole week was dry and then it rained before the race started. See, look at that.
It always rains at Le Mans.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a great another great finish to the race. It always manages to pull something out. It wasn't for the outright, but I mean this time it was LMP2. When you had Kubica and Yufi leading LMP2 onto the last lap, and the original thing that came out was that they'd supposedly run out of fuel, but apparently that was not the case. Apparently it was some sort of it was a throttle sensor
Broken
or something
throttle
like
sensor.
that. But yeah, so they once again. A 24-hour race isn't open until the checkered flag actually falls. Speaking of the checkered flag
Yes.
waiver was very, very lucky to be still with us today.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, that was scary. That was very scary. I mean, you could. It makes me worried every year when I see it. And this year, I mean, you had a couple of LMP2 cars that were absolutely hammer and tongs at it, racing right up to the line, and then suddenly there's a guy standing in the middle of going, congratulations everyone, and waving the flag, and he had to jump pretty quickly.
If he'd made a dive in the LMP2 out between to the right, he would have actually got him, and he wasn't moving fast enough.
Yeah, well, it was very. I mean, sort of.
Do we think that's a tradition that's outlived its usefulness?
Maybe ended.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
I've always sort of. I mean, if they're going to do that, it's like I think Paul might have put something on there about like the last lap was a sort of more of a ceremonial lap, like in the Tour de France, and that's not the case. They should do that. That like keep everything out. Have there and then give all of the class winners that one more lap, or even if they don't do the full lap, or even if they just go around the Bugatti circuit, and then have so they can get their shots. They finish, they take the checkered flag,
ceremonial finish.
Yeah, and then they can they can form into their different, and they can do the ceremonial lap, and they can come around and get the traditional shot.
Break out the champagne and just have a parade lap. Have a parade lap while they're having drinkies while they're driving.
Yeah, I mean, it was they were very lucky. They could have gone very, very badly as soon as I went. Oh, it was just so. It could have been so close, and it was well done by.
Especially if Sportsbet starts putting out odds on what's the gap between first and second in a particular class, whether it's going to be 5 seconds, 10 seconds, I don't know. That's just a.
Well, what was it in the end? It was less than half a car length that was in it, and he got caught up with the whole. Toyota are trying to do the whole ceremonial thing, and then you've got other cars who were out of it who wanted to basically cash in and be in on that photo, being on that the stage photo for Le Mans. They were doing basically photo bombing in the background. In the meantime, there's two LMP2 cars fighting it out tooth and nail suddenly for the win.
I got your joke there, Agent 86 over there on the other side of the screen. Missed it by. I got. Get smart.
Missed it by that much.
Mm-hmm.
I got the joke, Stilly.
And as Paul's saying, that gantry was up. There was a tragedy at Winton many years ago in a 5,000 race because they had that, and you see it in the past. If you look at all those, if you go onto YouTube and you see all the races from the old Peter Stuyvesant series and the Tasman series and all that, it was part of the thing. I mean, Glenn Dix in Adelaide was famous for like walking out and jumping in the air and doing the twirling, the American style, waving of the flag and all that on the track surface. But as Paul's pointed out, there was unfortunately a flag waver up at Winton who did get collected and was killed. So it's certainly not what the sport needs. It would have been a very bad look when you've got the entire world looking on at the most popular and the most prestigious long distance race in the world. To have if it had gone badly, it would have it wouldn't have been a good look to have all of those people watching somebody get mowed down at the last minute. But anyway, well done to Toyota, and the interesting thing was who to put money on all 5 hypercars finishing. First time out, and
particularly after the start.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, they tried. One Glickenhaus tried to take out a Toyota in the rain pretty quickly. I don't know what he was thinking, but they were both very lucky that they continued. The second Glickenhaus came back, and
Cold
they
guys with
all of them
track,
had
cold
sort of.
race locked up.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that
pretty
was it. I mean, they were just running
Cold
around behind
brain.
the safety car, and yeah, a bit of brain fade, and
Oh, brain didn't get into gear.
yeah, that was
Yeah,
that
here
was
it is.
So Stuart
highlights.
Scott,
Stuart's got
Genuine
it.
FIA WEC highlights. So if you want to check out all the highlights with the sound and playing at the full speed, go to the FIA WEC YouTube channel, and we can see here's the braking incident.
Yeah, just clear.
Oh, nice.
Brain
Just a complete
fade.
nudge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on. It's lap
just-
one. You've got
He's waving at
24
everybody.
hours.
One,
Just
yeah.
chill
You
out.
don't know where the brake device needs to be set.
He just wanted to see how fast everyone else was going.
Give
That's
him a
all.
break.
lap
Uh-huh,
lap one of a 24-hour
Exactly.
race. I mean, yeah,
How many?
like,
Well, speaking of, I didn't see. They didn't get enough of the. How many laps did they complete in the hypercar?
oh, I forget now. Does
Ooh,
anybody
there's
know,
a fun
Dave?
fact. I'll have a look at that then.
It was nowhere near a record or anything.
One less than the leader.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were
Always handy.
the Toyota, the winning Toyota basically won by a lap, and then of course second place. So it was as the ACO would have wanted. I mean, the Toyotas, the hypercars, the hybrids came up, and they finished 1-2. There wasn't a lot between the Alpine and the Glickenhaus. The Glickenhaus, I don't think anybody would have put money on both
371
of them.
laps for the leader.
371.
Oh, there you go. You beat me to it.
Yeah.
Cool.
369
I wonder what was
for
that-
the second place.
Wonder how that compared to last year. Though.
367 for the Alpine and the Glickenhaus, and 364 for the second Glickenhaus.
Yeah, that was pretty close. I mean, the battle for third could have been close. It was basically, the Alpine would pit, the Glickenhaus would go back in front, the Alpine would, and it was like Paul Trustwell. It was great to hear Paul back on Radio Le Mans there, because he has been very sick there. And
Speaking of, just before you said pits there, Brett. The number 7 car that won pitted 33 times. The number 8 car that came second pitted 37 times, 4 times more.
That was the problem.
And the Alpine, who come third, only pitted 31 times.
And that's because both of the Toyotas had fuel pressure problems and couldn't get all the fuel in the tank. So there were a couple of the number 8 car. There were a number of stints that it did that only lasted 5 or 6 laps, and they had to come in and put more fuel in because they weren't able to pick up all of the fuel. So the fact that they still won was a testimony to how much faster they were than everybody else. But as they said, they weren't in a position they were in last year, whereas they could have, but they could basically put the car away. They could have gone put the cars in the garage, lost 2 or 3 laps, and then come out and basically got those laps back. This year they couldn't because the gap wasn't that big. I mean, they said before the race, if we lose 20 minutes in the pits, we will lose this race. So. And
well done to Ryan Briscoe. So coming fourth in that instance, and also Matt Campbell and the guys at the Dempsey Racing, the famous McDreamy, coming 5th in their class for the Porsche as well too. So good on
and of course
Matt
the winner
and Jackson.
The guy who really got a lot of benefit out of the Team WRT car failing on the last lap was our mate James Allen. Guest on In Pit Lane about a year or so back.
He was
James,
great. Yeah.
James came into James and his team. Will Stevens and Julian Cannell came into 3rd place. So James was up there in LMP2 and on the famous Le Mans podium and waving out. So that's a moment he's not going to forget for the rest of his life. That's for sure.
John Corbett did quite well too, and he's Ligier.
Yeah. So but it was it was another. It was another interesting race, and but it'll certainly be interesting. Next year is probably going to be a bit the same as this year, but the year after is just going to be incredible. As we said, we've seen the announcements now. We've got all the people we said last week. We've got, apart from Toyota and Glickenhaus, and we will probably have Alpine. They didn't announce anything. They actually had a press conference They said, we've got a big announcement to make, and everyone turned in for the big announcement, and the big announcement was, we're not going to have a big announcement today. We're going to have it some other time soon. Later in the year, there's going to be a big announcement, but we're going to make a big announcement. And then General Motors did the same thing. I mean, they were there, everyone was there, and they said, we're not announcing anything today. So, that traditional day of Friday, there were no blockbuster announcements came out. And then 3 days after the event, they go, oh yeah, by the way, yes, we'll make it official now. Cadillac is coming back.
Well, GM had actually booked time at the circuit for some sort of demonstration, and press conference and track time on the Friday. But then a couple of days beforehand, they cancelled it. Now, one of the other announcements that the ACO made over the course of the event on Friday was the expected decision that the GT classes will transition from the ACO's GTE or GT Endurance technical formula to a variation of the SRO's and the FIA's GT3 formula, which is the predominant GT3 formula around the world. Hidden in that announcement, though, was the ACO announcing their intent to prohibit full factory involvement in GT racing in the WEC and at Le Mans. So we've seen previously, obviously, very strong fields in GTE Pro and in GTE AM. Pro, obviously, go back a couple of years ago, we had pro teams from BMW, Ford, Porsche, Ferrari, Aston Martin, and of course, Corvette. Corvette only competes with its GTE cars as a professional team. That's where they've competed professionally in the IMSA series, and it's where they've competed professionally when they get the invite to Le Mans. So I think that the two were likely linked in that GM and Corvette were negotiating some sort of pathway to continuing to have a Corvette presence at the 24 Hours of Le Mans with a in-orbit name factory team. Remembering, of course, that Pratt & Miller, which is an external organisation to GM, builds the C8R and the preceding C7 and C6R Corvettes for Corvette Racing and runs the team. It's not actually staffed by GM employees, so to speak. But I think what the ACO will pay particular attention to is what sort of driver rankings are available, considering now, of course, that LMP2 effectively has a Pro and a Pro-Am side as well. I'd say you'll see a similar sort of driver ranking requirement for GT, whatever they call it, GT Plus, GT3 Plus, GT Endurance 2, whatever the French decide to call it. They will reserve the right to set their own BOP and mandate their own technical parts. One of the concerns around switching to a GT3 formula is that the manufacturers will just homologate a one event a year special. There's the C8R. It's in an awkward position in that it was never engineered to become a GT3 car, and therefore the car next year when it runs in GTD Pro will effectively run as a detuned GTE car, not as a GT3 car. They can't kind of reverse engineer the speed out of that car from a technical basis, so they just have to do it by putting a bigger restrictor in it, putting more weight in it, and turning the wings down. So, I'm massively enthused for prototype racing at Le Mans in the next couple of years. Of course, we have the second generation of this control sort of one engine, one tyre formula for LMP2 coming. Along with the LMDH comes the second generation of the LMP2 formula, or this next generation. But GT is going to be a very interesting space to watch. Porsche and Ferrari have come out in support of customer racing for GT. Interestingly, those are two brands that are committed to both hypercar in the case of Ferrari and LMDH, the IMSA formula, so to speak, in the case of Porsche. So the GT space will become a very different looking space in the next couple of years. I think you'll see Pro GT racing predominantly in, say, IMSA and GT Pro, and then in the Blancpain GT series. Sorry, the GT World Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS, whichever region you want series.
Yeah, I mean GT3 has become ubiquitous, and it makes sense. And you can see why the ACO would want to do it that way, because they certainly want to encourage manufacturers to invest their time and their money in hypercars, rather than sort of but General Motors have made it very, very clear that that they wanted the Corvette team to be basically a pro team. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that. But whatever
I'm
they
sure
did,
they'll all find really sneaky silvers.
yeah, that's it. It's probably a really great time. I mean, you may well find that there will be professional silvers who are just they're just going to do enough. Well, what it might open is for a lot of older drivers as well, because don't you go back to silver or bronze
Once you're over 50, you drop
50.
one grade, and then once you're over 55, you drop a second grade. So let's say you're a 49-year-old platinum, you turn 50, you drop to a gold. You turn 55, you drop to a silver. The other thing is that if you're under 30 or under 35, I think it's if you're under 30, you're automatically a silver. So I'm over 30. My FIA ranking is bronze because I haven't done anything particularly exciting. Although I'd say I'm tending more towards lead at the moment.
Everyone, well, that's the thing. A lot of race cars, a lot of drivers
I'm
out
with you
there
there,
have
buddy.
not had a chance to race lately across the last 18 months. So everyone's status quo is going to be still on level parity against everybody else, but no one's done much racing, and the development of the younger drivers is not happening at the moment here in Australia.
So the interesting thing about the driver rankings is traditionally a number of series would run their own. They'd go, oh, you're seeded. You're a seeded AM, you're a seeded Pro Am, you're a seeded Pro, you're a seeded Super Pro, or something like that. The Australian GT Championship used to have gradings of Pro 1 to 6 and Am 1 to 6, and it was very confusing.
Every kiddie
Because
wins
the
a prize.
FIA, the FIA brought together a whole bunch of different series.
Everyone gets a ribbon.
System. But then every series does reserve the right to make changes based on that. We, of course, had the situation where we had the WEC Super Season, where it carried over 2 calendar years, whereas the driver ranking is only for a calendar year and if the series starts in that year. So you had drivers that started the WEC Super Season, in 2017, 2018, and then all the way through the following year, in the series they were in, they continued to hold that lower ranking, even though they'd done another series and had been graded up to gold, I think from silver, or they'd gone from bronze to silver. Again, it's one of the, everyone goes, yes, it's a good thing that needs to exist, but everyone disagrees about how to implement it better. There's some people who think that, we had gentleman drivers before when they had nothing that stopped people turning up with full professional lineups and they still wanted to race. So I'm sure that'll be a discussion point between the ACO and the FIA going forward about how they manage GT representation in ACO racing. Because remembering all the other ACO GT series, so the European Le Mans Series, the Michelin Le Mans Cup, and the Asian Le Mans Series, it's all effectively Pro-Am. There's no outright pro categories in any of those series. At minimum, each car, if it's Pro-Am's got to have at least one bronze driver in it.
The thing is, I mean, now it opens up to the fact that you've got at least you've got consistency now. I mean, there is a level that you can look at, and there is a criteria which is being set, by the FIA, and people can have a look, basically a shopping list and see, well, who's the best of the silvers, who's the best of the bronze. The bronze are going to be people basically, who probably the people who are going to be paying for most of the thing, and it seems to be the difference in a lot of categories in both IMSA and at the WEC level and Michelin Le Mans Cup, all of those sorts of things, where the difference is often the quality of your so-called gentleman driver, your bronze driver. I mean, you've got some of them who are actually, have developed into really, people like Ben Keating and Paul Dall'Alana and all those people who are actually developed into really quite good drivers. And you look at some of the older drivers, you'd have to say, if I was looking for drivers right now, you'd be sort of, you'd be looking on saying, well, hang on, that Craig Lowndes guy's always wanted to race at Le Mans. How old is he now? And
So good evening, Mag Cow. A couple of comments he's just made at the bottom of the screen. Thanks to Graphic Stewart. That there's some production cars that are all classified production cars. They're really prototypes to a certain extent. They're not. There's some really quick.
Hang on. I'll go back to the previous graphic. The Plaid is not a prototype. That is a full production car. You can't walk into a dealership and buy it because they don't have dealerships because Tesla.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Rimac is also on sale fairly soon.
Yeah, they're not wholesale yet, but they're going to be.
Yeah,
exactly.
it'll be on fire shortly after.
So yeah.
Well, I was just about to make a rollover joke. Yes,
and that is a seriously quick time for a production. 8.5 second quarter mile.
That's some very fast bread and milk.
That's a really solid, really top level, really top level.
That would instantly ban you from running at, I believe, most ANDRA or NHRA events as a street car. You'd have to bolt in a roll cage and put a parachute on once you go faster than once you're 10.99 and below.
Yeah, I think it's
even though you got 20 airbags in the thing anyway.
Yeah, the Dodge Demon gets you pinged if you drop below 10 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. I think it might be $9.99 there, but I'm not sure.
I think it's $10.99 or lower. So it's once you're in the tens or lower.
It's $9.99.
Okay.
A 10.01 on a Dodge Demon will run you fine for street legal.
Yeah, I think there was a Porsche Turbo S that it's like did one run and then got kicked out because they ran tens and they're like, nope, go home.
I think it also depends on the thing, because I know there's an argument between 400 Thunder and Andra in terms of what is level
regulations.
Well, because I know that was one of the sort of the bit of bickering that was going on between Andra and there was a bit of sniping between some people on the Andra
ring the bell,
side
ding ding ding.
So that's going to be interesting. Incidentally, for all the drag racing fans, our guest on next week's edition of In Pit Lane will be Andy Lopez from the newly formed Australian Top Fuel Championship Series, and he'll be telling us there. In fact, I'm interviewing him, pre-recording that interview tomorrow. He's going to be. We're keeping our fingers crossed because I'm interviewing him. He's actually going to be talking to us from the pits at Alice Springs Dragway. So let's hope that the signal is nice and clear from Alice Springs tomorrow when I do the interview. But if that all goes according to plan, he'll be our guest next week on In Pit Lane, 9 o'clock on Channel 31.
A quick shout out to a very good friend of ours. We were talking about guests in the last couple of years. Jordan Caruso. He's a great kid and he's not getting much drive time yet at the moment, but he's set up a bit like Thomas Randall, another friend of ours at In Pit Lane, and he did quite well in the E-Series, not saying it's not our cup of tea sometimes, but he was in the E-Series last night, which is obviously getting stream time on KO and Fox and that sort of stuff. Well done, Jordan. He's sponsored by Repco, incidentally, on the E-Series Supercars. Put himself qualified fourth. Was running second by lap 4. I'm just reading his post here as well because I follow Jordan personally and his racing page, and copped a whack up the butt, which is an automatic 40-second penalty. So he ended up in the way down the field, which wasn't his fault. So
the other interesting thing that came out of that last night, I watched that last night. It's quite entertaining. I mean, it was an entertaining the sim racing pros, of which Jordan was one of them, and there were a few names.
Dylan O'Keefe, another friend of ours.
Cooper Webster was from S5000, was involved in that as well. They ran at the Red Bull ring, so they got, and then the supercar drivers, the pros, they were on the oval at Charlotte, and that race was won by Richie Stanaway, which was so congratulations to Richie.
You mean Richie Bradbury?
Yeah, yes. It was a bit sort of keeping your head while all around you were losing theirs, but it was quite entertaining. I mean, it's not as you say, it's not I can't get too involved in it, but it was a good little diversion. And while I was waiting to turn on the cricket, I missed a bit of the cricket because of it, so it kept me entertained for that period of. that period of time. But the interesting thing that they also announced yesterday for lovers of sim racing and those who are into the iRacing platform is that iRacing have officially announced 2 new tracks, and those new tracks are Sandown and Winton. So
Saw that.
yeah, so Richard, there's a couple. The other platforms that you're on, I mean, is Sandown and Winton on any of those?
No, only Bathurst is on Race Room. And I'm not a great fan of iRacing. Just like you said, guys were hitting me up the Khyber and taking me out. And I was the one who got the penalty. Now, look, I must admit I hit someone in the back too. But, hey, I didn't get any penalty at all. I'm thinking, hey, that's not right. So it kind of, yeah, well.
Demolition Derby iRacing.
As someone pointed out on the thing last night, I mean, now it opens up the possibility of a virtual Victorian State Racing Series.
Well, now they might drag me back into it again. But
the point is,
you've got to progress up.
Series.
Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah. I can run last there too.
Speaking of not running. Sorry,
do we know that Sandown's been laser scanned in its current form, so it's going to have the patchwork quilt of inconsistency in surface and all the bumps and lumps and crack and everything that can be transferred from the real world to the virtual world?
They often do, you know.
Yeah, I believe so. They usually do.
Well, I think it's a pretty good investment for them in the Australian marketplace, considering the response that Oran Park got. So kudos to iRacing. You know, before Oran Park shut down and got bulldozed, they actually went and did the proper laser scan, GPS data tracking, all the reference photos about all of the signposts, and they had a wealth of reference material to work from. So it's interesting to see when tracks that don't exist anymore come back to life. Just wondering how much reference material we'd have to provide them, and how much surveyors information we'd have to give them to recreate Amaroo Park or Warwick Farm.
Yeah, I'd love to see them recreate Amaroo Park. There's been a lot of posts on Facebook recently from Amaroo Park, and Amaroo. It's one track that I never ever got to see never actually got to go to in real life. I managed to get to one meeting at Oran Park, but I never got to Amaroo, and of course grew up watching it on the television when they used to, when Channel 7 during the summer used to, go in and show some of the racing from Amaroo, and it was a fabulous little circuit.
Here's a challenge to the community. Catalina Park at Katoomba, New South Wales, which is designated as an Aboriginal place. The track is still there. You can still walk it respectfully. Someone needs to go out there, do a proper GPS survey on it of the layout, get some reference material from the period about, it's pretty easy to draw up a railway sleeper in 3D and just line the track with railway sleepers. I think with a reasonable degree of explanation about the origins of the circuit and the displaced community that was in that gully, that would be a reasonably respectful way to return racing to Catalina Park.
Yeah, it would
Dave,
be good.
Do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
Do you have an iPhone? One of the new ones? It's got the LiDAR scanning. Go and do it.
Yeah, let me just don my hazmat suit to enter New South Wales.
Yeah.
I've actually,
as everyone's saying, you just need to pose as a masked singer, and you can go anywhere you want with that hazmat suit.
I'm going to love answering those questions when I get pulled.
Yeah, football.
What are you doing in New South Wales? I'm here to scan Catalina Park. It's essential.
Yeah, well,
or just Dave, just have an engagement party up there. You can get away with anything.
Yes.
It is actually essential because as you say, a lot of the track, the basic outline of the track is still there. I did some. I haven't put it up. I mean, I took a wander around there a couple of years ago, coming back from Bathurst. I stopped off there on the way through, and took the camera around and basically walked around the track. And there's a few spots where it's there are little bits missing here and there, but you can pretty much go around and you can see there's still bits of the old BP sign is still rusted up there and rusted. But they're now talking
patina.
about
Look good in my garage.
Yeah, there you go.
but unfortunately, the local council are now looking at taking, because there is some
heritage listing.
There is some memorabilia there. There are plaques and there are signs, talking about the history of the circuit. But as Dave was saying, it was a very significant place for the local Indigenous people up there, and that's sort of taken. And now they're talking. The council are talking about basically, like just literally getting rid of all of that, like taking away, basically removing anything that was there as a part of the track. They're now talking about removing it, including because they said they don't want people wandering around. They don't want people riding bikes around it.
They don't want people getting hurt.
Yeah,
but isn't it a traditional second nation site?
No, well, it could be, but yeah, it's not a.
There's a good opportunity for a lot.
But as Dave said, that is the way you could do it. I mean, you could go around and you could recreate those. Yeah, you can recreate
the government grant for a second nation site. You'd be very good at doing that.
Heritage listed.
Yes, exactly.
And let's just see where the common ground comes for each of the different government bodies to see. We're just quickly going to jump on two wheels for a second too, and just go run what's been going on. Yamaha has decided to ignite the fire again, and Vinales has been canned from Moto GP riding for the rest of the year, so he can have a little bit of an extra long holiday before he starts with Aprilia next year, which he's now a factory rider. So it was immediately announced within 24 hours later. Maverick Vinales is exited the building at Yamaha, and he's going to jump and going to open the door at Aprilia next year instead. So the speculation is coming up, and I think Brett, you had something at the bottom of it earlier. Cal Crutchlow has been approached, or there's been some sort of nudge. What do you think? And he said, well, look, there's 8 or 9 races left. It doesn't really faze me, and this is almost word for word. Not really phased whether I do them all or not. So I'm not too fussed, which led to Brett's comment down the bottom there. Andrea Dovizioso has said that he wants to come back from his gap year and race again next year, and he's sticking to his word because he did have talks with Ducati and Yamaha about being a test rider. I think he has got some sort of written agreement with Yamaha, so he might jump on the factory satellite team because it will be a 2019 spec bike if they give it to him, and he'll be jumping on next to Valentino Rossi, and Franco Morbidelli, who's in that satellite team, will be then going into the Maverick Vinales side of the garage with Fabio Quartararo. So lots of comings and goings, lots of musical chairs going romper room style, going at factory Yamaha, and everyone else is just giving lots of support. I did notice that they said, as far as Maverick Vinales, and I hope he does, sit down and have a chat with some respectful people that can help him with his life choices and his decisions on where he goes and what he's going to do, because he's probably missed the boat on the best opportunity he probably could with the team he had. So unfortunately, but he does get a reprieve next year with Aprilia. Other than that, Jack, it's going okay, and all the rest of the gang, everyone at MotoGP, it's all about Yamaha at the moment. And of course, everyone's sending in lots of tributes for Valentino Rossi. And you did say also, Brett, that I think it was at the bottom as well too, that someone missed the VR46 press conference.
Didn't have that. Yeah, I think there was some major sponsors from Saudi Arabia or something missed the were supposed to turn up at the press conference to make some major announcement, and they failed to show, Your Honour. So Not sure about that. Hey, listen, we're just about out of time. We'll just to say, didn't know him, but there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of days about the passing of Robin Miller, the famous IndyCar journalist in the United States. If you've followed IndyCar at all over the past a couple of decades, and you read stuff from America, particularly nowadays from Racer magazine, but also some of the stuff from television. Robin Miller was a very, very respected journalist, and he unfortunately lost his long battle with cancer a couple of days ago. And there's lots and lots of tributes. Go to racer.com and read some of the fabulous tributes and some of the amazing stories from about Robin Miller. He was quite the character. He was as I was saying, he was one of those larger than life people who was sort of, even though he was a journalist and was sort of writing about the stars, he was as big a star in many respects as the people he was writing about. So so our thoughts with a lot of his friends and family, in particular to Marshall Pruitt, our Marshall.
I was about to say, think of Mark Fogarty having the reputation of Neil Crompton, or the popularity of Neil Crompton. If you want a bit more of an insight into Robin Miller, the person, I can thoroughly recommend his episode on the podcast Dinner with Racers, where he is completely unfiltered, has been since the start of it. His opinion was often challenged, but it was always respected. And he dates back to the days of calling the Indy 500 on radio and reporting for the Indianapolis Star. One of the keystone elements of Racer, the media company founded by Paul Thanner, and he will be sorely missed in the paddock and in the sport. I never got a chance to meet him. I only knew him through his contributions through the Marshall Pruitt podcast and through his articles on Racer. And you read it, and then you listen to the guy talk, and you realize the words and the actions are one and the same, unfiltered and always appreciated.
Yeah, that's it. He famously many years ago, they tell the story about his first coming together, about him writing some particularly unflattering words about a Mr. A.J. Foyt, and Mr. Foyt sort of met him and properly gave him a bit of a left to the bit of a right to the mouth or something, and they became the very best of friends after that point, because
and then he talks about Uncle Bobby.
Yeah. So he was quite the character. So unfortunately, we've lost a couple.
There's been a few lately.
So
we did lose Uncle Bobby, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Two quick fun facts as well, too, before we leave as well. One, Gary Rogers Motorsports got 3 cars for hire if you want to race in TCR by the end of the year. I saw come up on the news today. So just contact Gary and Barry, and they'll look. Yeah.
We got a deal for you.
Gary Rogers has already got my mobile number. He knows who to call if he needs a spacer between the seat and the steering wheel. Who knows how to drive a front-wheel drive car?
That's all right.
I'll be off the back. I won't have anyone to run into, so I'll be fine.
Well, I was going to say I might empty my pockets and I'll come and join you as well too. And we'll have a bit of fun there out there. Still, we can do an in pit lane special. We can
have an in-pit lane sponsorship.
Commentate live to in-pit lane if it helps drum up the sponsorship to get me on the
TCR grid. Like the Channel 7 did it years ago. We could do a Peter Brock special with the open helmet, you and I, and just go left and right.
And the great thing about TCR car, they got electric driver's windows. You put the window down, get myself an open-face helmet, and then I can start... I can commentate like this. Actually, there's no gear stick, so it's just paddles in the steering wheel.
Very good. And the other fun fact...
I'm thinking I've got the hardware to take care of that.
Oh, well, we're in trouble. Oh, Lordy boo. And the other one is, it was at the bottom of my caption, but of course there's 7 of us on tonight, which is fantastic to grab all these wonderful gentlemen around so we can have a great discussion and provide some entertainment, some fun facts for you. Cryptocurrency is sponsoring the successful amount of passing maneuvers made in Formula One. So good. There's a trophy now for that in Formula One that's going to be awarded.
Seriously.
And it's a cryptocurrency that's sponsoring and going to hand it a
Here,
have a Bitcoin.
The UN Human Rights Convention, UNHRC.
Everyone gets a Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Which bit of it?
One
Very,
million.
very small bit.
I was
Don't
going to
show
say
me
1
right now. It is immensely depressing. A couple of years ago, I actually got a chance to go and visit what's left of Amaru Park, and it's unlike Oran Park, which got converted into real housing where real people can live. Amaru Park has got like 10 houses spread across several square kilometres. It is immensely disappointing what's happened to that, particularly now that you actually have to drive through bushland to get to the houses that sit on top of where Amaru Park was. Like where it was almost perfect for the size that Sydney is today.
Well, you could just leave all the houses in the middle and just leave the track around the outside. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They did that at
There's
Bathurst.
nothing left. There's basically nothing left anymore.
Yeah, it's very, very, very sad. Very sad to see it go, and unfortunately, probably sad now. Now what we need now is for either for perhaps for both Tony Quinn and Lindsay Fox to get together and buy Lang Lang, because Lang Lang's for sale again, because VinFast, the Vietnamese company that bought it, have basically said
That
no,
was
we're going
short
to
and
sell it
sweet.
again now. So
They're now
so
Vin
if,
broke.
There you
Lindsay
go,
and
everyone.
Tony-
Chris spoke. There, Richie spoke. There you go. Words.
So we can. So let's see if we can get a
Let's have him buy Calder first off Rodney.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
get
it.
that up and running.
So
Forget
there's
Calder.
Lang Lang will
Buy
probably
Lang Lang.
cost less.
Close to
there's
me.
the shopping list for you, Tony. If you're watching Calder, Lang
McGregor
Lang,
Road
and of
out
course,
here in South East.
McGregor
Yeah,
Road.
just
there
have a
you
look
go.
down the back of the couch and just find the spare couple of million lying around. Use the
No,
millions
and
we were going to
he's
use
got
to
it
buy
too.
Taupo
Oh, dear.
and Queensland Raceways. Use them to
Look
buy
down the
Calder.
back of the couch and find a Bitcoin.
Get both of them
sitting down
falling in
there.
a heap.
Yep, that's it. So
let's
you can
let's
probably
not
do that.
forget there's also a purpose-built racing facility in the Yuyangs.
Yeah.
Ford's
Which
still using
which
that. Ford still has a very
Well,
heavy
again.
engineering
Ford,
presence in
yeah.
Australia.
yeah.
Just
Yeah,
came up for
that's-
sale again today. It fell through on the first run.
Yeah.
What, the Yuyangs?
AC Delco, as they're known in Australia now, is selling their old proving ground.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that was that was the one that was Lang Lang, which was VinFast.
Sorry.
VinFast bought, and then they've only owned it for a couple of months, and now they've apparently put it back up for sale again because they've said because of the whole COVID situation and because of a whole bunch of reasons. They've just said the plans originally, which was to develop their cars, to use it to develop their cars in Australia, they've now decided basically not to do that. So
That's
it's
probably
up
got
for
COVID
sale.
tax on it. Yeah, COVID tax.
So
It's
it's up for
gone up
sale.
in
Well, they
price.
just said at the moment because they couldn't get in and out, they were worried about the future in terms of getting access, and there was probably a lot of politics went on. But anyway, whatever happens, they're going to sell that place now. The interesting thing was that apparently Lindsay Fox did try to buy it. He was apparently the losing bidder in that, so hopefully he'll put up his hand again. Now, what he does
combine
with
that
it...
with his what is it? The
Discount.
Australian AARC, Australian Automotive Research Complex, that's over at the backside of Anglesey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you, Hackers.
Yeah, so he'll be possibly looking to expand that, but it would be there's certainly plenty of room there. I mean, and that is an amazing venue. You'd never do it. I was fortunate enough to have one play around at Lang Lang on both the oval and drove a Walkinshaw Commodore.
The
around
VL.
around that oval, the big 7 litre. It was terrifying. Absolutely killed my back because I made the mistake of accelerating. Seeing just let's see how she'll go, and then threw me back into the seat so hard it nearly put me in hospital for a week. But
VL, Brett.
I think it was the VL. Yeah, it was great fun out there. It was great fun out there at the on the skid pan as well. But the reason we were there is it was one year. It was the site of Formula SAE in the early days of Formula SAE, and we went out and did a couple of things. Out there with Formula SAE, so that's how we ended up getting out there. Okay, everybody, I think that's about all we've got time for this week. So as I said, Formula 1 coming up. Formula 1 coming up this weekend. Do we have, is the British Grand Prix Moto GP this weekend? Or
Silverstone.
Silverstone, yeah, okay. So, so we've got, both Moto GP and Formula 1 are back, and, as we say, nothing, at this stage, nothing much happening in Australia. There was a bit of bit of racing up in Queensland on I think there's on the weekend, and I think and Malala is coming up as well. And somebody actually reached out to us and said, "Hey, why don't you come over for the celebration 60 years of Malala?" And it was like,
Sure.
yeah, I would do that. I would probably do that, except for
Is
the
it
fact
5Ks?
we can't get. Yeah, that's it. It's a bit outside my 5K limit. I actually went for a walk today and realised I sort of looked down and I thought, hang on, I think I'm outside my 5K limit, and that was just walking. So, yeah.
As long as you didn't get caught playing on the playground equipment, there you go.
Yeah, and there you go. Congratulations to Dave for not eating this week. I think Dave did bring some fruit.
Well, on that note, it caught me just as I was preparing. Tomorrow is, I think, Choc Ripple Cake, a Choc Ripple Cake Festival celebration. So I've got my first one in the fridge right now, and I have 2 more to make. I'll have some feedback for you on next week's show about Choc Ripple Cake was the best.
Okay,
There you go.
What was your cream, sugar, and vanilla essence ratio?
It's one.
Probably not as high as
bottle of
mine.
cream, 1 teaspoon of caster sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence.
Oh yeah,
Pretty good.
Okay, there you go. See, we give you everything here. We give you cooking tips. We give you
show.
there. I mean, I haven't looked. I mean, anybody got the cricket score? I mean, is the cricket still going? I mean, I think that's going to be a 3-day test. The way that's going, England and India at the moment. That's
and Anderson's come out and all guns blazing, hasn't he?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, he started the rot, and because as I said, I tuned in late, and I sort of thought because I'd forgot about it, and then I thought, oh, hang on, the cricket is on. And I turned on, and I thought, hang on, I thought India were batting. Yeah, they were. They were all out for 72.
Thanks, RC.
Okay. Sprint car. Oh, that's
Go
interesting.
look for that one.
Yeah, sprint car Chariots of
yes.
Fire being streamed from Darwin over the next 3 nights. Thanks for that, Russell.
Brilliant
Yeah,
stuff.
that'll be worth watching. So so we've got something to watch over the next 3 nights. They've actually been doing a bit of streaming from the speedway up there. I watched a bit.
That's the great thing
They've
about
been doing
this.
streaming from Darwin, haven't they?
With all the mainstream
Yeah,
stuff.
yes, we know all about streaming from Darwin.
From
yes.
Darwin, yes.
I can say,
With all the mainstream stuff that's not been going on, all these fringe ones are actually getting some airtime. So that's great.
Yeah, well, that's it. And but yeah, thankfully the streaming from Darwin was taken care of today. Thank you. So finally,
Really?
yeah. So
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Very pleased.
yeah.
Richard, they're back on the Christmas card list now.
Oh,
Right.
Okay, anybody, let's get into inside baseball now. So we'll catch you next week here on Four Course Yellow, straight after In Pit Lane on Channel 31. We've, as I said on the Facebook page, we've got a new lead-in program now. I think it's called the Happy Family Show or the. But basically, it's not the animal murdering programs anymore. It's actually wholesome family entertainment. So if you tune in early, you'll see people sort of travelling around Australia and having a good time and being out in nature and enjoying it. You won't happen to stumble across somebody gutting a pig.
There goes. It just wrecked it, Brett.
He's a fuzzy animal, I've got to know.
Next week I was going to rock up in my full camo gear and my bloody I'll have the rifle beside me and the bloody hat straight. Oh, that's it. I am not getting dressed up for bloody I'll shooting next week now. Damn it.
Well,
AK-47 to get rabbits.
I like where you're coming from with that with box. Yeah, I think that's Kahlua to the Choc Ripple Cake. I think is a good addition.
Coffee Choc Ripple Cake. Coffee edition.
Yeah, a bit of Kahlua or a bit of Tia Maria would go very well, or even a bit of Bailey's if you want to slum it. Okay, that's all we got time for. That's all we got time for this week on Full Course Yellow. Until we see you next week, thanks for joining us, and we'll say goodbye. So catch you next week. Enjoy the Grand Prix on the weekend. See you later. Bye.
Bye.